My name's Alan Guy, born in 1932 in Liverpool. I joined the army when I was 17 and a half in 1950, and I joined the Army Medical Corps. Previously I'd been studying public health work, so I became what they called in those days a hygiene assistant, which meant I had to do 3 years full training in all aspects of preventive medicine in all types of climates and every type of disease known to man. And January in 1953, I was called to serve in Korea. Well, you didn't have the publicity in those days that we have now. We didn't have television, so we had no real knowledge about Korea. What we did have, we'd been through World War II, so we were not afraid to go and serve our country. Otherwise, we wouldn't have joined the army in the first place. I joined a boat at Southampton. It took us 5 weeks, going to many exotic locations on the way through to Busan, which was known as Busan in those days. It was a totally different country in those days. Well, the thing that first greeted you in Busan was the smell. Unfortunately, there were many, many paddy fields for growing rice, and they were fertilized with human manure. That was what we smelt when we went into Busan. And of course, the place was totally devastated. Everybody was poor and obviously feeling the effects of the war. It was a far cry from, we expected that we were going to a foreign country which would be full of palm trees, blazing sunshine, and we could all relax on the beach. But it was a totally different place when we got there. I arrived in January and it was bitterly cold. I remember the boat was pulling in to Busan harbour, and the wind was howling, and we were dressed in just normal battle dress. We hadn't had any winter clothing issued us at the time, so it wasn't a good introduction, let's put it that way. We stayed in Busan for a very short period of time, and I was sent as part of an advance party somewhere north of Uijeonbu. I could never tell you where it was. We set up a base camp, 3 of us, and we had to stand on guard all night, every 3rd night, in case of any enemy infiltrating. It was bitterly cold. We couldn't have a fire. We had a tiny tent, which 2 were sleeping in, 1 was on guard, and I was on guard, and there was a stream running alongside, and a light kept coming towards me. So I raised my rifle and I said, "Halt, who goes there?" And there was no answer. So I said, "Halt, who goes there?" Still no answer. And I was becoming very afraid. And then a firefly came past my ear. So I was totally relaxed after that. It was quite a worrying time. I remember that vividly. But however, eventually the remainder of the unit came to join us. We were a 30-strong section, totally independent of any other troops. We had an officer, we had a sergeant major, and we had a staff sergeant, 3 sergeants, of which I was one, and we had our own Royal Engineers and our own cook and our own drivers. On a daily basis, the 3 sergeants used to have to go to the front line to visit any of the Commonwealth troops. You know, I visited the Welsh Regiment, the Black Watch, and Hill 355, and saw a little action where a plane was napalming one of the hills alongside. On one occasion, in the latrines, which had a superstructure of corrugated iron, and all of a sudden the shell fire, bang, bang, deafening. I was worried that I was going to end up down in the pit, but luckily it turned out to be outgoing instead of coming. I didn't know the difference at the time. If you're talking about MASH, it was nothing like MASH. And there's only one time I went to the MASH because I had this operation done there. You didn't go into like a plush hospital. We were outside and there was a table and we were all in a queue, those of us with the minor injuries. And I had to put my hand on a table and then they gave me anaesthetic, opened it up, and then when they eventually stitched it, they didn't use stitches that dissolve. It was like fused wire. It went through and was twisted at the end, which was okay until you tried to take it out, because the wire, it was, but the job was done and my hand's strong as it ever was. You never remember the worst side. I remember being in a jeep travelling under enemy observation, and it was following the monsoon period and there was a lot of stagnant water, and we ran into a hole, a shell or mortar hole. I can remember sitting still in the seat in the jeep up to here in water, muddy water. We still had to carry on. An American truck managed to pull us out, bearing in mind we were still under enemy observation, so we were quite at risk. When they got us out, we had to carry on to the front line. Yeah, and there must have been about 2,670 wounded, but I did not have any comrades killed in Korea because we were such a small unit. We'd been at risk of getting killed, but we were just lucky, I suppose. I look at it as part of my past. It's all past history, which if it hadn't have happened, I wouldn't be here with you today talking. So it has a positive side. The whole of the Korean War has a positive side because I've met so many nice people, not talking only this country, but I've made so many good friends in Korea. That particular one was a place called Choksong Gyeonggi-do. It was in front of a minefield. We were clearing an area for the field ambulance to move into. That one was taken at Busan after I'd had the operation on my hand, and I'd been moved down to Busan for rest and recuperation, and that was my driver. There was just him and myself who were responsible for doing all the preventive medicine and advice round the whole of the Busan area. This was when we'd set up as more of a permanent camp later towards the end of the Korean War. Oh yes, this photograph was taken with General Pak Sun-yup at Fort McNair in America, in Washington, when I went on a veteran's visit, and that's him. And the gentleman on the right is Kenneth Wu, who was the interpreter for the peace talks at Panmunjom. I did correspond with Kenneth for a while afterwards, but we've lost contact now. Your general has passed away, unfortunately. in one word,
Yeah.
peace. The fact that there'd been an armistice and in theory there should be peace throughout Korea. We all hope and we pray that one day the two Koreas can join together in peace and harmony.